to Bill Clinton.
Is that what? Who said that?
Me, after last night.
This is More FM 16 to 8. We're joined by Peter Fitzsimons. One man has said he is the second best after-dinner speaker in the world, next to Bill Clinton.
Oh, I'm not
You're better than him?
I'm pretty happy about that. In fact, my wife, Bill Clinton's coming out to Australia in November. My wife's emceeing one of his dinners. Very impressive man, Bill Clinton. Do you know he used to play in the second row at Oxford University?
Yeah,
he played rugby and was absolutely red hot keen on rugby.
Is that right?
Yep.
Who have... Give us the three most interesting men or women you have met in your career.
All right. Very quickly, I would say Mother Teresa. I only had 5 or 10 minutes with her, but I felt I'm a rabid atheist. I don't have a religious bone in my body, but in her presence I felt I am in the presence of goodness and greatness. I just felt she was a terrific woman, and I'm not making this up because I'm in New Zealand. Sir Edmund Hillary, I just thought he was a magnificent man, just a great man, and a very humble man, and accessible, and the story he told and the whole thing. I'll tell you the story of interviewing Sir Edmund Hillary very briefly. I was in Auckland in '95 and I said to a mate of mine, I'd really like to interview Sir Edmund Hillary. You know how I could get in touch with him? And he said, well, have you tried the phone book? And no joke, in 1995 I opened the Auckland phone book and there he was, Sir E. Hillary, and it was I remember the address, 278A Remuera
That's right.
Road, and there was a phone number, and I called him up, went over, and I remember at one point I'm interviewing him, and the secretary, his wife came in and said, Ed, have you seen the scissors? And I wanted to say, you can't call him Ed. Not Ed, it's Sir Edmund. And the other one that I didn't like him, well, I did not like him, but I interviewed President George Bush Sr. And it was a long story, but he flew into Australia on New Year's Eve 1991, and on the New Year's morning, 6 a.m, I was sort of covering the American president, like I was the junior burger. He went for a run, and he went to like 15 cars, motorcade, went to Scott's College Oval. I knew the back entrance, raced down there, 3 Secret Service guys pushed me up against the wall, searched me, frisked me, you know, the whole thing. Anyway, I'm ushered into his presence, and to cut to the chase, as I'm interviewing, I had 6 minutes with him, I'm thinking, this is complete gibberish. You know, I'm speaking to the leader of the free world. It's not making sense. However, I'm a junior burger at the Herald. I'll go back to the Herald, I'll write it down word for word, comma for comma, ellipsis for ellipsis. Some great and universal truth will be revealed when I look at what the American president is saying. And I went back and I wrote it all down, and sure enough, it was complete gibberish. Absolute gibberish.
Well, you're an unusual guy in the sense that there are not that many sporting people who also achieve greatness in other areas. I'm not flattering unduly there because you're backing the wrong team on Saturday, for example. But nonetheless, you've written 17 books.
I'm up to 22 books.
22 books now. Now, well, you are obviously an overachiever. At some point in your life, you must have made choices about where you're going to go. So at what point was that you thought media, writing,
Well, it's
rugby?
interesting. You're very kind in your remarks. What I would say is I'm not a sports person who turned into a writer. I'm a writer who used to play sport. And I don't, like when, I always say when I talk to sports guys, I was talking to one the other day, an AFL guy, I said, look, you've done well, but don't define yourself by that. You know, don't say, who am I? Well, I used to play for Carlton Football Club. You've done that in your 20s, now move on. You've got to find something else that you're passionate for. And a lot of what I do, it boils down to storytelling, telling stories, and I love it. At the moment, I'm writing a story, the best story in the history of the world. I'll run it by you to see if you two have, well, in fact, so I forget you. I'm Gary. I'll run it by you to
I'm
see.
all ears.
The Shipwreck of the Batavia. Have you heard of it?
Yes.
1629, off the coast of Western Australia, 331 people in a ship. They hit this reef in the middle of the night, 30 miles off the West Australian coast, and it's like an adults-only version of Lord of the Flies. They divide up into 2 islands. They've got the baddies with all the guns, all the women, all the grog, and they've got the goodies on another island with nothing. And the baddies, the chief baddie Geronimus decides, I've got 200 people here, we can only get enough food and wine for 40 of us. We'll have to kill them all except 5 women who they kept for what was called common service, so 5 women to serve 38 mutineers, and then we need to attack the baddies. Anyway, it goes on and on. It is the most amazing story I've ever worked on. What I say when I'm talking to students is you've got to find yourself in a gig. Excuse me. You've got to find yourself in a gig where it doesn't feel like work. If you love what you do, find a job you love, you'll never work again.
Yeah.
And for me, I'm delighted to be here, but I'll be back in my hotel room at 8:05, and I'll get in for, about 4 hours, I reckon, of writing this Batavia story.
Right.
Because I love it, and it's so.
And then you'll go and do the luncheon that we're all going to be here today.
Okay.
It's great life.
Let's talk rugby for a moment. Richie McCaw, is he the greatest rugby player in the world today?
He impresses me deeply. I've written the biography of 2 World Cup winning captains, which is Nick Farr-Jones and John Eales. And in my opinion, with very few exceptions, you can't win a World Cup campaign unless you've got a fantastic captain to build the team around. And you look at, so Martin Johnson's a classic example. I mean, he was a colossus among men. Nick Farr-Jones, John Eales, David Kirk's a great friend of mine, although perhaps that was more an Andy Dalton team. Francois Pienaar, Smith, you know, they're terrific people and charismatic, and they build around. I look at Richie McCaw. What impresses me about Richie McCaw, it's not simply the ground that he covers. You know, like, I mean, I think in my day the average second rower or back rower would cover maybe 7 or 8 kilometres. I don't know. I imagine Richie McCaw probably does 15. He just seems to be everywhere, and yet everything I hear about him, he's humble, he's kind to women and children. You know what I mean? In that sense.
And we interviewed him yesterday for 20 minutes live on air, and he remembers his mother's birthday.
That's something.
That's the kind of guy he is. So will the All Blacks win the World Cup?
I would sooner have, all jokes aside, I would sooner have, there's a lot of speculation about Robbie Deans at the moment about whether he'll be sacked or not. If I had to put the sheep station on one thing, I would sooner put it on Robbie Deans being the coach of the Wallabies, because that's an absolute definite, than the All Blacks winning the World Cup, because you can't ignore history. And many times, going into every World Cup, I always say the All Blacks, yes, they look terrific, but 7 minutes into the second half of the semi-final, they'll fall apart. And every time I've been right, except last time when it was 7 minutes into the second half of the quarterfinal.
That is true. That is true. So in your heart, do you feel, oh wise one, Yoda, do you feel that will happen? I
think if the All Blacks do not win next year's World Cup, New Zealand should give up, haul up the white flag and take up ping pong. Because you've got everything going with you for you. That fantastic team you've got. Every position's absolutely so strong. I mean, it's unbelievable how strong that team is. And they're playing. I mean, they're playing with exuberance and joy. It looks to me like they're not playing with slide rules and quadrangles. They're actually getting out there and enjoying playing and running and doing it. The only thing is, Muhammad Ali, one of his things when he was fighting against Joe Frazier, I'm going to wrestle with an alligator. I have wrestled with a whale, handcuffed lightning, and put thunder in jail. And he was talking about the advantage that he had, that you needed to be knocked out once before you were a proper boxer, because the first time you're knocked out and you go into a room where alligators are playing trombones and it's frightening, and it's only when you've come out of that room that you understand if you take another hit you can do it. This All Black team has been so successful. I imagine there are younger players there who don't know what it is to be 20 minutes to go losing by 13 points. In that sense, they've been just before, and so I live in hope that the Wallabies will put it on them, you know, here in Christchurch. I mean, there is a good Wallaby side there. They played with 14 men against an All Black, the best team in the world.
Tell someone who cares.
And they got 2 tries.
Right. Hey, listen,
before I go, did you hear that news flash that just came overnight? Have you been covering this story out of New York about the actress, New York actress?
No, Peter, no.
Actress in New York stabbed overnight. Reese.
With a spoon?
No, with a knife. My favourite joke. I do it all over the world.
Peter, it's lovely to talk to you. Peter's speaking at luncheon today. We've got to run, Peter, because we actually have more important guests. But thank you very much for coming in, mate. Really nice to talk with you.
Thank you.
Look forward to seeing you at lunch, mate.
Peter Fitzsimons with your mates at more.
We've had such a lot of fun over the years, haven't we?
Fun? You were great.
You're right.
And I was...